Yeah.
And it's so very detailed. What does
Yeah.
it do for you as an actor to be able to have sort of that physical space that you know is yours, and to have it be that detailed and that in
Well,
depth?
it's a real treat, really, because the detail, as you say, of that, and have you seen the basement, the armory?
Yeah.
Fantastic, isn't it? And it's just adds to this guy's interesting past, and it makes you, I suppose, hopefully it makes the audience think, what's going on there? What's in the jar? Under the cover, and as you know, it gradually becomes apparent throughout the story. And as you know, with all the flashbacks as well, going into the concentration camp, and it just gives him an interesting past and a rich one that hopefully the audience will gradually get to know him as well as all the other characters as they move along together. Now we're down to 5, this band of brothers and sisters, on a mission.
Now, the series seems to be a melding of a modern medical drama and a classic 70s Hammer film. And you're kind of like the Abraham Van Helsing of the whole thing. How did you approach that?
Well, I didn't think about anything like that, and I suppose when you come into something cold, and Guillermo started me on my first day with like virtually a 2-page speech with the hoodie guy behind the counter.
Yeah.
And that was my intro. I mean, normally when you start a film or a TV, you hope the director will say, now this is your first shot, so we just want you walking down the street with your back to the camera, just to get
used
warmed
to
up.
Right.
But Guillermo, he said, I thought I'd throw you into the deep end. So thanks, mate. And when I was first asked to do it, I mean, it was 3 magic words, Guillermo del Toro. I'm a big fan, and Pan's Labyrinth is one of the finest films I've ever seen, and I enjoyed Pacific Rim. And I didn't really need to see a script. I can't actually remember if I saw a whole script, or they just give me a breakdown about what happened to the character. I just knew I wanted to do it. It's the first time I've been to Canada, let alone worked here. So
And what do you think?
It's quite an adventure, quite a big relocation.
What do you think then when you get to set? Or obviously, at this point, you've seen the script, but when you were doing a scene with a heart in a jar and you're feeding it your own blood,
Yeah.
was it just kind of, this is Guillermo del Toro world? Was it just like, this is part of the fun?
That's right. And I'm looking forward to finding out more about the story about him in his past life before he decided to change it and move to New York, and his relationship with his wife. Maybe there'll be scenes with her later, I don't know yet, so I'm waiting to see. But we're all so excited that every time a new script lands in our mailbox or whatever, it's very exciting because, as you probably know, I'm about halfway through the trilogy at the moment. And sometimes I'm reading the book and learning a script, and I get the two mixed up sometimes. There are some things that are in the books that aren't in the script, and vice versa. There's added scenes to the film that weren't in the books.
Yeah.
So I'm prepared to be, no matter how familiarizing I am with the books, I'm prepared to be surprised anytime.
Wicked.
Can you talk about your casting, David? Just because obviously John Hurt was announced originally, then he couldn't do it, so of course you were cast. Was it a very sudden thing where you had to make a decision right away about, because film had already started? How did that happen for you, the casting?
Well, it was a bit like, can you come to Canada for 5 months in 4 days' time? So
Wow.
there wasn't too much time to think about it. Getting the passport and the visas and everything, and trying to organise stuff at home. So I just threw my lot in and said, I just know I want to do this. I want to be part of this thing. You just know from seeing his work that he was going to make it look special, and it was, I think, thrilling for all of us to see the pilot and what he'd done with it. And we know the rest of it's going to be like that.
Yeah.
It's going to be pretty exciting. And it's great working with different directors on each episode. Apart from the Harry Potter films, where we had some directors did 3 or 4 of the films. Chris Columbus did a couple, David Yates did, I think, 4. So we had different directors on that, but my contribution to the process was minimal compared to this, where you're kind of you're in the vanguard in terms of what happens in the story. So to be working with all the directors have been so interesting in their way of working that they're all part of the same storyline. So that was a new experience, and they've all been just great to work with.
The things that are in the book that you read in the book that aren't necessarily in the script, are you able to use that as background for your character? Do you think of that, or do you just sort of put
yes,
that
I mean,
aside?
just reading about the stuff in the concentration camps, you're aware of it. It's great when you've got something like that to give you a sense of the character's history. Because it's just a great guide, and there are passages in the book about the revelation of the characters and what they're about, and they're pretty descriptive about the shop and his world and what his life is like. So the books have been very helpful in terms of that, but as I said, in terms of storylines and scenes, you've got to just take it with a pinch of salt.
When we meet him in the pilot, he's trying to get to Corey's character, and Corey basically thinks he's a crazy man. Can you talk about that relationship and how it develops? Is there a trust forming, or is there still, is he keeping me at a distance?
Yeah, well, there has been quite a bit of resistance initially from both Ephraim and Nora, and Nora is still thinking it's morally wrong to release these people, as Satrakian puts it, because when the story opens, nobody knows what is going on, and all the experts have kind of figured out. Some have been bought off, of course, and the fact that when Satrakian just sees that TV screen, in a moment, the audience realise that he knows something that no one else knows. And I can imagine if I was Ephraim or Nora, do I think this old guy is crazy? He's talking about vampires. Is he mad? Is it all in his head? And of course, Satrakian knows, and it's very frustrating for him not to be believed. And even after they've experienced and seen these vampires, or Strigoi as Satrakian calls them, they're still having their reservations about the way of dealing with it. And Ephraim's naive enough to believe that if he has them on video, I mean, Satrakian knows he'll just be locked up and the video will be destroyed, and because there's so many forces, not only from the master, but from all the authorities that either are skeptical about it or who have been bought out. So I like the way the relationship, particularly with Ephraim, is developing, and gradually his relationship with Nora, I think, becomes warmer later on, and he takes her into his trust, and I like to think that she reminds him of his late wife in some way, and I can see that might be an interesting line to follow for Satrakian. And I like the conflict between him and Ephraim, and it's not all buddy, we're all in this together for quite a while, and they still have their fights, and Satrakian thinks Ephraim wants to control the situation, and then Fett comes in, which adds another mix to the pot, where it's like who's running this show, between him, Ephraim, and Abraham, and Fett. unspoken struggle to be in the driving seat.
But you do come across as pretty much of a badass in the opening. Like your opening scene, you get to throw down with a punk and take him out, and then you go downstairs to your basement, and you've got a huge pile of guns that you're just throwing another one on top of.
Yeah.
How does that feel to be like the badass on set?
Well, I like the fact that the audience will think he's either mad, maybe bad, and possibly dangerous to know. and as the story develops, they think, oh, he's right. He knows, he does know exactly what's going on. So, rather than being just a virtuous kind of high priest of vampirism or something, and I love it when the audience's expectations are overturned.
Yeah.
In any drama, because there's conflict on the outside and there's conflict within with the character. And although he is quite old, I like the fact that there's someone of my age who is someone who's proactive and not someone who's just a passenger or being helped through this. I gradually find out it's his desire for vengeance, particularly about what happened to his wife, the love of his life, and that gives him that drive and anger and energy for him to want to see it through and not fail this time. And that's what gives him this vitality and the ability to go into action with his sword. It's just like he's finding that extra, like an old boxer coming back again for one more bash at the title.
Well, what is that like for you as an actor to get to sort of showcase that physical side? I mean, how comfortable do you feel with what this guy gets to do?
Well, I've reached the age where I've played quite a few. My daughter keeps saying, Dad, why are you always dying? And it seemed I've spent enough time on screen in lying in bed on my last legs, frail old guy, and so it's so nice to play someone who's got that vigor and that drive and brave enough, to wade in with his silver sword.
So Chuck, in the books, these kills a lot of there. He really does, like you said, wield that sword. Have you had any training at all with the sword this season? Do you get to kill many vampires? Has he gone through training and whatnot yet?
I've seen off a few, yes. and Jamie, the stunt coordinator, he took me through my paces. I think maybe because they knew I'd been with the Royal Shakespeare Company in England, in all these history plays. I think they assumed he probably quite handy with the sword. But,
Right.
I didn't correct them before I took it. So although I've done one or two fights, but I've never been very good at it. It's not been something we all put it on our CV, horse riding, fighting, and often we can't do either. In my case, that's true anyway. So, but Jamie, he was absolutely brilliant. He put me through the movement with it over and over, and we filmed it, watched it play back, and he reminded me the sword actions. And if it looks good, it's down to Jamie.
When you're filming something sort of fantastical, like the scene with the heart, how do you keep the character sort of grounded and real?
When he reveals it's like if someone close to you has passed on, and maybe you have a photo of them that you just always go back to remind you of the love and everything, and I suppose that's his only way of keeping a link between him and his wife, and even to the point of cutting his own finger and feeding his heart. It's kind of bizarre, and I should imagine the watching audience will think this is probably a bit sick or something, but for him it's real, and I've got to, as an actor, you have to believe that in that jar, or just convince the audience that what's in that jar is the love of your life, as weird as it seems. So I just try and imagine, it's all imagination really, it's trying to imagine what that would be like, and that's my job as an actor, to make people believe that.
Now, you've had a long career, but last year with Game of Thrones, with Broadchurch, with the Doctor Who movie, how did 2013 feel different to you?
Well, I've never had a year like that, and it just happened to have been in 3 or 4 successful things, and all of them shown in the States and in Canada, so it's nice to come over here and be sitting in a bar or a restaurant, and someone will come over and say they enjoy Broadchurch and Game of Thrones, and they're looking forward to this, and the William Hartnell thing, and I suppose it's been the best year in terms of getting stuff shown over here for me, because most British actors will say, oh, it's good being in successful things in England, it's great, but if you can be in something that's successful on the biggest stage across the pond, it's every actor's dream. It's like if you love doing theatre, to play on Broadway, it's what you all want to do at some point.
Do you prefer being the sort of proactive good guy or the menacing bad guy?
I like it when there's a kind of mixture of the two, and the audience are not sure which way you are. I mean, as I said before, just being a good guy makes you more predictable, but because of his past and because he may be prepared, because he's on this lone mission that he manages to persuade other people to come along with him on it. He could be wrong, he could be just totally unrealistic about how to deal with this, but it's his only way, and he's putting himself in danger, which I don't think he worried about too much, as long as he can do some damage. But he's also allowing other people to come along and put themselves in danger. So it's not really selfish, but it is in a way. It's in pursuit of what he wants to do. He's prepared to, and he tells them openly, if you get turned, I will have to release you. And he assumes that they'll do the same for him. So it's a mixture of the good and the bad, ruthless, but for the best possible reasons.
Yes.
And that makes him more interesting than being. I mean, I have played some totally irredeemable characters. I mean, like Game of Thrones, Walder Frey. There's nothing to, you don't invite guys like that to your wedding.
Have you heard from any Game of Thrones fans? I'm just curious about
I have. I'm
what
actually winding the car windows down, shouting at me.
What did they shout?
Well,
Nothing pleasant.
I can't print that.
Yeah. And they say, shout, I can't forgive you for what you've done.
Are you concerned at all that it might take fans a while to sort of see you as a hero again after that?
Well, Michael McElhatton, who was my co-conspirator in the Red Wedding, when we finished the scene, we both agreed that we might just stay off the street for a few days.
Obviously, people, the fans of the Game of Thrones are going to want to see, some follow-up to that. We already know that, you weren't on the show for 2 years, season 1, and then we didn't see you for a couple of years.
Yeah.
It's a good problem for an actor to have, but with this show, have you guys talked about the logistics, if they need you on Game of Thrones, and working all that out?
Yeah. Well, I bumped into David Benioff and a few of the stars at Comic-Con in San Diego last year. we had a meal and a drink, and they said, "Oh, we'll be seeing you again soon." But obviously
Wicked.
not in the fourth season. But
Right.
I'm sure there's some kind of retribution waiting for me somewhere down the line. But I like to think he gets away with it.
Everyone's such Game of Thrones fans, including in the industry. Have the people on the strain. Have they been like, okay, we'll try to work that out schedule-wise? If
Yes. Well, I leave that to them, and I just hope it works out. But people send me stuff on YouTube of people's reactions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you seen those?
Yeah, it's amazing.
People who've read the books and know what happened.
Yeah.
They film their friends watching, and I'm watching the screen. I can hear my voice in the background, the music playing. Incidentally, one of the musicians, I don't know if you know this guy, in the musicians' gallery, the musicians that turn to crossbow merchants, one of them turned up, and he's the drummer from Coldplay.
I didn't know that.
And I can't remember his name, Will Champion. And I think he was rehearsing for a world tour, and he asked for time off from the band, Chris Mouse and the band.
That's
if
cool.
he could come over, I think he came over at his own expense, didn't want to be paid, he was a huge fan of the show, and he just wanted to be an extra.
Wicked.
So, and he's a great guy, and they gave him permission to come over for a few days,
That's
week, whatever. And he sat up in the gallery, and the director said, well, if he's there, we might as well, if they're all musicians, we might as well give him a drum. So I think he gets a little closer to his own at some point. So you realise then how big it is and how very talented it's got. But to see all that YouTube footage and people cursing at the screen,
I
it's
got
rather alarming, but quite
It is.
gratifying.
Yeah.
brief personal aside. I got married last year, and right before we played our first dance song, this is right after that episode aired, I had told the DJ to start playing Reigns of Castamere. And my wife had no idea. And only one person in the crowd laughed. Got the reference, and then it went into our song. But she appreciated it.
Oh, right. Oh, good. That's
It's
excellent.
fantastic.
It must be interesting for you though, because in the Harry Potter films, you played a comical antagonistic character, but those movies mean so much to people. So I'm sure you get reaction from fans of that. To see that mirror with Game of Thrones, where both very passionate fan bases, but you're going to elicit such a different reaction. Do you see that with the different kinds of people you encounter now, fans?
Yeah, well, especially with the kids who watch the Potter, I was so relieved when I went to the first premiere, because I read the books and I thought, yeah, of course, he's the caretaker from hell, and some kid said to me, oh, you remind me of our caretaker at school. And I thought, oh my God. And I was so relieved when I went to the first premiere in London, and the audience laughed at him. They found him funny. Because I thought, well, I'm going to be a hate figure for kids all over for the next 10 years. But I'm surprised at the kind of affection he inspires in some people. Because he's so hopeless and such obviously a job's worth. And we kind of all know people a bit like that who give them a bit of a uniform, a bit of authority, and they behave like complete monsters. And yet kids fear him, but he fears something higher.
Yeah.
So, he's frightened of losing his job, he's frightened of getting a lack of respect from the kids, which he gets, and his only love, it's his love for his cat that kind of redeems him.
Have you had any interaction with the actor who's playing your character on the Broadchurch, the American remake of Broadchurch?
No, I've had a couple of messages from Chris Chibnall, who wrote it, and said he went out to the West Coast to write the American version. I don't know anything about it. Are all the same characters?
I think it's roughly along the same lines, yeah.
All right.
And David Tennant is playing the same character in both shows.
David, yeah. Oh, you see, I thought that the story, I had no idea, but I thought the story was moving on, and he was onto another case, American.
I'm forgetting what it is. I think it's pretty similar,
Yeah, I
but
think
I'm
it-
not
yeah.
sure of the
I think
exact
it's Nick
specific.
Nolte who's playing the.
Really?
Is it?
If memory serves, I could be totally wrong. I thought it was Nick Nolte who was playing your character. but
Really?
I could be totally wrong.
I knew he
that's,
signed up for
yeah.
the show, so
Yeah.
he could
Huh.
be. Yeah.
Well, that makes sense because we're both hunky guys. I didn't know that. Wow, that's yeah.
You mentioned people sort of laughing at the Harry Potter character, and also I was just rewatching for the DVD, watching the Red Wedding again, and you're really funny in that scene. I mean, it's
Yeah.
scary and terrifying and disgusting, but also funny.
Yeah.
Do you get to bring sort of a winking sense of humor to Satrakian as well, or what with the vampire
Yes.
apocalypse coming, is it not funny?
Yes, well, and the pilot that we saw here the other week, which for some reason they showed it to us while we were eating. And some people go, oh. I did hear laughter on more than one occasion. And I
Wicked.
thought, well, that's good because there is kind of humour in it. And I think the darker the piece, as Shakespeare knew very well, that even in the darkest, deepest tragedies, he wrote these funny scenes in that just to take the pressure off the darkness of it. And he has got an ironic, at times, ironic sense of humour about the situation, which makes him human and not just a one-dimensional driven figure.
Yeah.
But he's seen enough in his life and been through enough to have retained some kind of irony about the way life turns out and what it throws up. And I think that makes him more accessible as a character and someone an audience hopefully will recognise more. It just, I wouldn't say it's a twinkle or a knowing wink, but just his attitude is that's what happens. That's life. He's got his kind of philosophical side to it, which so all these little things, and you try and make them all part of the bigger picture as an actor, and you try and find as many colours as you can in this tapestry or picture of the person you're playing. Anything, nothing that's not there in the script, but just honouring what's in the script, and I think in the writing and in the books, that's all there, that sense of irony and philosophy that he has.
What do you like about Abraham Satrakian? What is the attraction to that character? What's the core? What's its core to you? I really like this character. It's someone I want to be with for the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. Well, it's his mystery. But I mean, for him, it's real, and it's a kind of realistic situation. But some of the things that happen are kind of out of this world. But it's based in a kind of truthfulness, and you've got to play the truth of the situation. Because I've seen a lot of vampire films where there is a kind of, it's like saying to the audience, I know this is crazy, I know it's silly, but we're having fun, you know. But I don't think that's the case here. I think you've got to play it straight down the line, because once you get yourself into a corner of playing a knowing irony about it, then it loses its truthfulness. And as I said, the fact that he's had such a past life that none of the other characters know about. Maybe he will reveal it to F, Nora, in fact, later on. But it's that enigmatic side to him, and I just love his energy. And so, yeah, let's hear it for the old guys. Because you don't get many dramas, as I said before, where they are that active. So it's a lot of things, but mainly those. And I just love underneath all that, he's just got this humanity, and he's aware of the pain of others. He's aware of what Nora's going through and her mother. I think I've just got episode 11, and I've been looking at that this morning. And he's not without empathy for the other characters, and that's also very important. You can see where they're coming from as well. It doesn't stop him from pushing through his agenda.
Out of that huge armory, do you have a favorite weapon? Is it the sword?
Oh, I love my nail gun.
Nice collection of nail guns.
Yeah. And there's I love the big wooden elephant in the pawn shop, near to the counter at the end. Every time I go in there, I think I'm having that. But that's all to be negotiated in 5 years' time or whenever. But I've got very fond of it, so
Brilliant.
unfortunately I need a really big coat to get it.
While we're talking to you, I have to ask, in one of the Harry Potter films, I think Goblet of Fire, you do this amazing run through the Great Hall, this knees up run. Where did that come from?
Well, he just said run up the hall, hurry up the hall. So I thought, how would this guy run? And I figured it would be just, and I did a take of him walking fast, and I did a take of him just running on. I think, no, Filch wouldn't run like that. So I just wanted to make it ludicrous in some way.
Wicked.
And now, I mean, sometimes I get invited to schools to talk to the kids, and they want to ask questions about Potter. And invariably say, will you do the run? So I dutifully oblige, run up and down their hall a couple of times, and it provokes hysteria, and it makes me very happy. But I have to remind them, I say, well, you just saw it the once, but on the day I did that about 40 times. So just think about that.
That's brilliant.